Good day, everyone, and welcome to the NESG Radio. My name is Sheriff Aderibigbe, and I am a Communications and Advocacy Associate with Nigerian Economic Summit Group. Today, we'll be discussing the topic Fortification 2030, envisioning a well-nourished future for Nigeria. And to help us dimension this interesting topic today, we have with us Dr. Olapeju Phorbee. I hope I pronounced that well.
Very well.
Okay, so Dr. Olapeju is a nutritionist with food science and public health background. She has over 20 years of success in food, nutrition, health, and agricultural programs. She's also a project management. She has worked in project management as a lead coordinator, principal investigator, and senior program manager and technical advisor. She's currently an independent consultant, founder of an NGO, Food Agriculture Nutrition Network FAN, and a co-founder of 100-Fold Consulting and Services. You're welcome, Dr. Phorbee.
Thank you very much.
Okay, the topic of discussion today is Fortification 2030. How can we make Nigeria, a nourished economy, in future? So, for the benefit of the audience, what is food fortification really?
Yeah, thank you very much, and thanks for the invite and for this interesting and much needed subject matter. Food fortification. The word fortification is used everywhere, but coming down to food in specific, food fortification is the practice of adding essential micronutrients. When I say micronutrients, I mean minerals and vitamins that are needed in small quantity, but then they are very important. So deliberate addition of these micronutrients into our common foods, ingredients and condiments to enhance their nutritional value. That is food fortification. I mean, let me go through my keywords there. Practice. So it's not one-off thing. It's something that you do regularly at industrial level and other level. But in this context, industrial level, what you do regularly. Then you add micronutrients. Micronutrients, they are based on our needs. What is the need of the population at the point? At that point in time. For instance, Nigeria has issue with vitamin A deficiency, and most of our foods are deficient in vitamin E. So what do? We fortify our foods with vitamin A during processing. You can fortify after processing, but in this case, during processing that is carried out by industries, sometimes with the backing of government, so that those foods, our rice, our maize that we are used to eat every day, yet deficient in those micronutrients, they can be enriched, they can be improved, so that when we eat them, we're sure that we're getting something and we are addressing those deficiencies. That is food fortification. It's one of the strategies that it's globally recognized as a way to address micronutrient deficiency. One of those key deficient malnutrition areas in the whole world. Nigeria is not an exception, but it's particularly high in this country, Nigeria. So efforts are being made around that. And the key thing is that fortification, especially the industrial fortification that the industries carry out with the backing of the government to decide on which micronutrients are we looking at and which ones are we promoting, are we adding, and which ones are fitting into it. So basically that is layman definition of food fortification.
Okay, thank you very much, Ma. So you talked about industrial fortification. As a layman, if I go on Google to research, I'll probably see things related to biofortification and industrial fortification. Mm-hmm. In terms of reducing malnutrition, I don't know, which do you think we should focus on more, industrial fortification or biofortification?
Okay, thank you for that question. Fortification, if you take the word fortification, there are about 3 types of fortification. With the first one that I mentioned, which everybody is really looking at it, it's attracting global interest. In fact, it's been attracting global interest. That is, we call it commercial or industrial fortification. That's the one you do. You fortify the foods during processing at industrial level. The other one is biofortification. From the word bio, biological fortification. This is where you enrich our crops before we plant them, we harvest them. They are already enriched at breeding level. That is biofortification. The third one is what we call point of use fortification. That's the one you do after processing. When the products come to you at home or in school, you now add at the point of consumption or using the food, you now add the micronutrient powder or whatever form. That is the third type of fortification. I won't say one is they are all complementary to one another. I've been privileged to work on biofortification and fortification at large, and I can say they complement each other very well. While the industry, the food industries are taking care of the industrial fortification, which or the foods that will buy, the processed packaged foods that will buy, they are looking into that at grassroots, at community level, at rural level. We're looking at biofortification where a woman can have access to the planting material, the biofortified varieties, plant it and get it, and have access to it. And the industrial fortified foods, they are not necessarily the same as biofortified foods. Industrial is looking at processed packaged foods. Biofortification is look at crops, yam, maize, cassava, sweet potato, and all that. So they're two different things. But if we target the population in mass at industrial level, we should not forget the ones that are down, that may not have access all the time to the industrial ones. We should be able to take care of their own micronutrient need at that level.
Okay, thank you very much. But I'm sure our listeners can now differentiate between biofortification, points of use fortification, and industrial fortification. So now talking about industrial fortification, if let's look at it from the business angle. A lot of companies now might wonder why should they, at the industrial level, why should they fortify, food? What is the gain for them, and what social impact does fortification at the industrial level have to such businesses, especially small and micro enterprises?
Yes. Okay. That's a very good one. Thank you. You see, fortification, it has different legs. From the health angle, health leg, from economic leg, and the social leg. And those three, they are important to every stakeholder of fortification, especially the industrial ones. The industries, they need to know. Well, fortification is not new. Industrial fortification is not new in Nigeria. But then, I can say it's not where it's supposed to be. So there is still need for awareness, sensitization, education, and making the industries to know. Yes, I understand that it's not all the industries that are fortifying. And you mentioned small, medium scale enterprise. That's another, issue entirely. But basically, I think development partners, governments, public sector, they need to make the private sector, that's the industries now, to know the importance of this. It's beyond economy, rather health. Health, when health is good, of course, it has implication on productivity of the population. So it is all encompassing. They interface. Industrialists that are not into fortification need to be educated on why, on the costs, because the narrative is, oh, it's expensive, it's costly, overhead is high, and the cost of production will be on the rise by the time you're fortifying. Well, I won't say it's on the rise or not on the rise, but looking at it, the impact of health, the effect it will have on health compared to the cost. I always say something when I do nutrition education. I say if we should eat well, so that food, we should make food our medicine. Otherwise, medicine will be our food. If we eat and the society, the population is healthy, productivity at its peak, we have true healthy food, of course, economic benefits, economy will be impacted in the long run. The industrialists need to be made to know that. And this fortification we're talking about, it's not something that every time you incur costs all the time. Aside from the fortificants that you add to those things that you are already used to doing, there isn't any big deal there. And if we get to the point where all our foods, the mandated ones, are fortified, and consumers, even industrialists, they don't have a basis for comparison, then the issue of course will not come in, because you buy what you see in the market. But by the time you are saying, if I don't put it, my cost of production will come down. But then we are talking to consumers. If you don't see fortified ones, don't buy. Go for fortified ones because of XYZ to your health. So if we get to the point where we say all our vehicles, the mandatory ones, are fortified, people are not seeing non-fortified ones for them to say, oh, it's cheaper or it's not cheaper. And if we get the backing of the government, which we are to an extent, in terms of fortificants, bringing it into the country, in the long time, talk of local manufacture of manufacturing of fortificants, access is easy. In the long run, like in other countries, there is established research results that it's even cheap. It's cheaper. When you look at it on large scale basis, it is cheaper. To iodize salt, you need $0.05. That's the cost that is being incurred on that. On vitamin, I think $1.17 or something. And Nigeria may not be at that. It may not be that at the moment, because we're importing most of this fortificant. But by the time we are doing it internally, it will be cheaper. And even the imported ones, if the government can have some tariffs, make it tax free, duty free in importation and all that, the price will come down. But the long term effect should be our priority, in terms of, oh, at the end of the day, people are getting what they need to get. And in terms of social impact, I think the industrialists need to be told that they are not alone. They are not the only voice crying in the wilderness. No. Collaboration is coming in. Private public partnership is coming in. International collaboration is coming in. And at the end of the day, we have this multi-stakeholder, multi-sectorial approach that will boost the social impact of this in the long run. And that will speak to acceptance, ease of accessing both the input and the output at the end of the day. So I think large and short and long, the industrialists need to be made to see that it's not what I see Nigerian industries as. They are afraid of what is not there. There is no cost benefit analysis that has been done to see, to say this is more or this is less. So we need to, maybe going forward, there is still need for more of research activities to gather evidence around what we are telling these industrialists. It's not as bad as they think. At least in other countries we say it work. So why would you work in our own giant of Africa? It will work.
Thank you, Dr. Phorbee. So you really explained the benefits that industrialists and even individuals stand to gain. When food fortification, compliance is at its utmost, best. So now we are looking at it now. For us to perhaps get achieve the goal of food fortification by the year 2030. It means that government really has to have the right policies in place and the right mechanisms to ensure that all these companies, basically, comply with fortifying their products and their, whatever products comes out of them. So, but what do you think the government can do to ensure that all these industries adhere to these policies and whatever mechanisms they have in place?
Okay, good one. Thank you. Now to the government.
Yes.
You see, to make food fortification sustainable in Nigeria and achieve that Vision 2030, it's not what the government needs to do is not far from what is being done already. Rather, I would say strengthen some activities that are going on and possibly introduce few new ones. I look at, from my experience with large-scale food fortification in this country, um, from research angle, from development angle and all that, I see that for Nigeria to really go forward with this, we really need to put it as a priority. Food fortification should be prioritized in our policy, in our food and nutrition policy. I was privileged to talk to one of the DGs of the regulatory agencies sometimes, and I was like, sir, there is need to put food fortification on your top priorities. And I was like, no, safety is more important for me. This is Safety is good, right? But this is another safety in quote. You see, deficiencies of micronutrients, we call it hidden hunger. Hunger that you cannot see. You will not see it. Even if you get to the hospital, it's when some things start happening that you know that, wow, there is a problem here. It's hidden hunger. So it makes people to overlook it or underrate it. That is not a big deal, but it is really a big deal. Because the beauty of fortification is, if these products are fortified, they go far in reaching the population and addressing the challenge of micronutrient malnutrition. They go very fast. I worked with sugar industries in this country. I think we have about 7 or 8 of them in Nigeria. What does that mean? It means 8 companies are serving over 200 million of Nigerians. So tell me, if we work with those 8 companies to ensure adequate fortification, what are we talking about? Consumption of sugar is really high in this country. At household level, at industrial level, rural, urban, everyone is sugar consumption is a leveler. Everyone is consuming sugar at one time or the other, to one level or the other. So if those 8 companies are worked on enough to have adequate fortification of products coming from those industries going to the population, we will be rest assured that they are getting vitamin A. The same thing with oil. But going forward, from my experience on fortification in this country, I see that Nigeria is looking at one size fits all approach to all our fortification in this country. Nigeria has about 9 food vehicles that are mandatorily fortified in Nigeria. The flours, that's the cassava flour, wheat flour, maize flour. We have our oil, we have our sugar, margarine, salt, and all that. You see, unlike salt iodization, it's carved out and treated as salt iodization. Rather than saying food fortification, put everything together and have similar approach, can we, the government, the regulatory agencies, start thinking of where we have sugar fortification and takes it, address it as it demands. Be specific in our responses to all those food vehicles. Oil fortification, take oil fortification and address issues around oil fortification. Oil fortification is something that needs serious attention in this country. We have a medium scale processor of oil. We have small scale, those ones at home in the north, maybe doing groundnut oil and not refining, just doing it, bottle it and go. We have the medium one, we have the large one. You see, if you look at fortification, how many of them are fortifying? Maybe the big ones. The medium one, the small and the medium one, who is looking at them? Meanwhile, in the north, from our national survey that we conducted last year, 56% of the groundnuts that is consumed in this country, groundnut oil consumed in this country, comes from that nut, processed by those middle small women. Where is fortification there? So like half of the population is not reached. The large ones, there are so many practices, malpractices around that. People are bagging and rebagging, rebranding, repackaging, reselling. So if you see a particular brand of oil, you cannot be sure that what is on the label is what is in the container. So oil sector in terms of fortification needs an approach that is not necessarily the same as sugar fortification, not the same as flour fortification. So those ones we have to be specific, use product specific response to our addressing fortification issue in this country. Then the more the merrier, they say. Beyond the regulatory agencies, I think we need to raise more stakeholders, bring people, have multi-sectorial approach to addressing fortification in this country. Yes, prioritizing it, yes, I said one. Be context specific or vehicle specific in our response to them too. Third one, have multi-sectorial approach. That is the global recommendation. Bring people that can speak to engagement. I like what NESG is doing. Bring policymakers, bring people that can speak into advocacy, into sensitization, into awareness, and into research. Bring them on board and let's look at it. You see, the regulatory approaches in this country, to me, from experience and from the research that we just did at National Food Consumption, we see that a lot is happening at factory level. Not so much is happening at market level. Nothing or little is happening at household level. But what is the end, the ultimate aim of this fortification? To reach the households. We collected some samples from households on the mandatory fortified vehicles, and upon analysis, they were really, really low, and that is the target. So the approach should be holistic when it comes to regulatory monitoring. Regulatory monitoring should not just end in industry. Please come down to market, go down. I know Nigeria is large, I can understand. It's a very large country. That's to really monitor. We put strings on our resources, on our budget and all that. But believe you me, it is worth it. It's a worthy investment. If Nigeria can have a structure around this regulatory monitoring, and again, the access of this analytical access of these vehicles is very important at all levels. How much, how easy is it for food manufacturers to check vitamin A content in the vehicles, in salt, in sugar, in sugar, in oil, in margarine, to know, okay, it meets the requirement, the standard. The standards are there, good enough. But how much can they, what does it take to analyze easily these samples? And so the capacity of the stakeholders is very important. The facilities to know that, to analyze, to check, rapid check, to know that, okay, this meets up with the standard, this does not meet up with the standard. To do that, I think we need to really look into it, and we need to raise more advocates and champions that will support the campaign for strengthening fortification in the country. I think going forward, we may need to look into those areas. There are more, but for now, let me
Dr.
pause.
Phorbee, thanks a lot. You've really explained the things that the government needs to do in ensuring that you know the goal of fortification by the year 2030 is achieved. But again, let's look at it from the aspect you mentioned earlier that about 56% thereabout of granite oil, being mined comes from the northern part or being used by people. No, so if we look at 56%, some critics may argue that perhaps the reason why the usage, people will prefer groundnut oil from those sources is because, because of affordability. They are cheaper, cheaper to, to buy and all that. So, but going forward, how do you think that how can we respond to this to ensure that even though if food is fortified, it remains affordable for the common man to afford, to buy and consume?
Yeah. You see, that all you're talking
Mm.
about, I would suggest that go to the people, help them, support them. If you can have point of use of fortification, we can also have small to medium scale fortification. Teach them, make the fortificant available to them at that level to use. Then the affordability we're talking about, that's what I'm saying. As long as we have, by the time everybody is doing this thing, it will come down. It will attract government attention enough to say, okay, fortificants, what can we do to make it the cost come down? It's not so much of the cost, even the access, that the ones that need it can have access to it. That's for me, that's the most important. If we revisit the importation of it at the moment, the structure, the process, if you revisit it, we will see where and what we can do to cut down, to crash the cost and make it available. If one is doing, of course, one person importing fortificant or two companies importing fortificant for the whole thing, of course monopoly will set in, a lot of things will set in that will make it to be high. But by the time it's coming more, maybe when you're bringing it, you're bringing more, the cost comes down. So it will come down. So it's just for the stakeholders, regulatory agents and all them to look into it. What can we do better to do in the short term? In the long term, how do we get it locally sourced? How do we get it locally sourced? If that is the, and as long as people don't have that advantage of comparison advantage of saying if everything is fortified, you are not looking at what is not fortified for you to compare the cost, but rather you are everything everywhere is fortified, vehicle is fortified. That one will bring that, because people go to market to buy what they sell on the market. And this fortification we're talking about is not, well, some containers, some brands can put it there, some don't put it there. So it's not as if you will say, okay, this is fortified, this is not fortified, this is 10 naira, this is 15 naira. No, that's not the system we have at the moment. You go there to buy, you buy, you take home. You are not saying nobody displays that unfortified 10 naira, or no. So if we can look at the situation, the process of procuring fortificants, and see where we can cut off tariff, levy, tax and all that, can be import duty, all those ones we can look at it, and in the long run source it here. I think for that it will crush the price, that it will not be, the difference will not be that significant that consumers will now say we are not buying. It's an essential commodity in every household. So that is an advantage, is an opportunity for the stakeholders, the producers especially. Well, whatever it is, people will buy. It's food, people will buy it. So do it well, and don't give them that basis to compare that this is for that, this is not fortified. Rather, let everything be fortified and stabilize the price.
Thank you, Dr. Phoebe. So, our listeners, you've heard it from Dr. Phoebe. She's talked about, how we can. Fortification doesn't mean food won't be affordable. Rather it's going to improve our health. There are a whole lot of economic benefits also inherent in it. So, moving on now, Dr. Phoebe, we're looking at it again. Let's talk about success stories. From various countries that have adopted fortification, since that's the target of Nigeria by the year 2030. So if we look at it now, what are some of the experiences, of these countries in terms of their success stories that can inspire local industrial manufacturers to adopt fortification?
Yeah. Yes. In the developed and developing countries, there has been successes. You see, even Nigeria has success in sort iodization. At some point, Nigeria was recognized for that. It's just to sustain it. Ghana is at the moment doing into rice fortification. It's even voluntary. It's successful. Nigeria is not far from success stories as well.
Thank
I
you.
know for that, that's for sure. With what we're
Yes.
doing, and just to add more to it, just to review and to structure, we are very, very on track. We will get there.
So we actually hope our policymakers are listening. Just as Dr. Phorbee said, we are not far from achieving, full success of fortification, but we still need to do more. And we hope, we get all these things implemented as time goes on. So we are now looking at how government policymakers and the private sector players, involved in food production and processing, uh, what can they do? What are the measures they need to adopt to ensure a well-nourished future for all Nigerians?
I think it's part of what I've said earlier on.
Yes.
Prioritize it in our policy, in our strategy, plan of action. Make it a priority. The level of attention given to food safety should also be considered for food fortification. Raise more stakeholders that will speak to it from different sectors and disciplines. We need that seriously. Like I remember I worked on I led some project on biofortification in this country, and then biofortification was relatively new in the nation. One thing that I did that worked was to raise advocates and champions. We call it biofortification champion and advocate. Can we have champions and advocates that will from different sectors and disciplines, even among the policymakers, that will speak to fortification within their spheres of influence? I think we need that talk, because the regulatory agencies, they need support, they need funds, they need regular sources of income, they need resource allocation beyond what they are doing, and not necessarily relying on development partners, international donors. We need to own this. We need to make it a priority in our budgeting annually. And to go, another thing that is very important that I see here is we need more research activities. Research work to gather evidence around whatever we are telling the public, the private, the policymakers. For instance, on industries, regulatory agencies, they go to industries to say, are you fortifying adequately? Say yes. They test their product, yes, it's fortifying. You go to market, it's not what you saw in the factory that you're seeing there. You get home, it has decreased. Where are we having the losses? We need research. We need a lot of research. How do we assess? We need to build capacity of the key players in research around this. What is the retention rates or loss rates, nutrient loss rates around our value chain from factory to table? What is the loss, so that we know how to educate those people, the other stakeholders in the value chain, the marketers? How do you display this food in markets that will not result in loss of the nutrient added? How do we use it at home that we'll be able to retain the added nutrients there, so that at the end of the day the work done is not zero? We need to generate research activities around this, so that we come to, okay, this is how you will manage your sugar, this is how you manage your oil at home, this is how you display it in market, this is how you store it. So we need a lot of research work around that. And above it all, we need people to speak into it. If you get the support of the key movers and shakers of this country on fortification, we will move. We will move. And that is a sure way that we can significantly reduce micronutrient malnutrition in this country. If all this, and there, like I said, there's still more. Let's bring the multi stakeholders together, and let's brainstorm on how do we make sure that this is a global strategy. So if it is working globally, there is no reason it will not work nationally. It's just for us to put our heads together and see what we need to do more, what we need to do less, and what we need to do not at all. We need to do that.
Thank you, Dr. Phorbee. So now we'll go to the average man on the street. We've talked about food fortification and its importance. Now we are looking at it from, I as an average man, I walk into a store. How can I identify a fortified product, food product? Uh, if I'm buying salt, you talked about salt, flour. How do I identify that? Okay, this particular flour, you know, product is fortified. This particular sugar is fortified. And are there specific nutrition labels that are on these products that can help to guide, the consumer on the street?
Okay, thank you. Yes, at the moment, our sugar, our oil, they have been fortified by vitamin A. Vitamin A for fortified products, if you pick the label, that's why it is industrial, so they are done on branded products. If you pick the product for vitamin A, you see logo of an eye. Inside the eye, there is a letter A. So letter A inside an eye logo says vitamin A, that's fortified with vitamin A. For salt, there is a NIS logo, yes, National Industrial Standard. And there is this one that they put Nigeria map green and about 3 figures or something. So there is a logo, there is a picture that you see, that's for symbols. Some write fortified with iodine and whatever is fortified with. Some write it in statement, some put it in form of logo, some they put nutritional labels, which nutritional labels does not say more, but statement or logo tells you this is it. Although for non-educated buyers, consumers, it may be a problem reading, but we try to do logo as much as possible to encourage logo. Put the logo of an eye with A inside, and we tell them, if you in sensitization, if you see this kind of image, this is fortified. If you see this one for salt, this is, and those that can read, they can read it is they read the statement. So there is always statements on those products, on those brands, that this is fortified with whatever they put inside it. So we have it, but the most important is the container and the content should agree.
Thank you very much, Dr. Phorbee. It has been a very enlightening session. We are sure our audience and listeners have been able to learn so much about food fortification and how it is critical in ensuring a well-nourished future for Nigeria. As Dr. Phorbee has said, we need to also, enjoy the government, our policy makers, private sector leaders, industrial captains of industries, those in charge of making laws, those in charge of ensuring that food fortification is adopted, throughout the country, because food fortification is critical in reducing malnutrition level. It's critical in ensuring that eating hunger becomes a thing of the past in Nigeria. Thank you very much, Dr. Phorbee, for your time and for educating us.
Thank you.
We hope to see you next time.
You're welcome.
Thank you. So, to our listeners, thank you for listening to today's educative program on Fortification 2030, envisioning a well-nourished future for Nigeria. We hope to see you next time, and you can listen to this conversation and other interesting conversation on www.nesgroup.org/podcast. Thank you once again, and see you next time.